I listened to a brilliant Radio 4 segment the other week entitled I Was There When. The statement was deliberately left open ended purely so that listeners could get in touch and fill in that segment with their memories. It got me thinking. I've lived for nearly a quarter of a century now, and yet there have been very few significant positive world changes. Perhaps this is me being nostalgic for yesteryear, and it's true that we often measure the glory of past successes and events against our current circumstances. And at times we even put them on a pedestal because they were the original defining events. But nevertheless, they have been defining moments in human history, and there are very few today that have had that magnitude and that positive driving force. Almost inevitably, this brought up for me the topic of climate change. In recent weeks and months, there have been a number of global forums on climate change. What concerns me about this is how ineffectual they've been. Countries are running rampant, pumping millions of tons of pollutants into the air, and the agreement that they've come out with, if you can call it that, is almost nothing more than a non committal shrug of the shoulders and a grunt of confusion. If I understand it correctly, most countries seem to be under the assumption that because the US and Britain have gotten away with it before, this suddenly gives them the right to release pollution into the air in ridiculous quantities. What a brilliant idea! I'm all for equality, but this game of follow the leader is nothing more than a descending staircase into an environmental abyss. Call it too strong a term if you will, but if we sit and do nothing, then our descendants will suffer for our lack of awareness and judgment. If we sit idly by, then all we have built will have been for nothing because eventually our planet will make us pay for our mistakes. We, the human race, are standing now against an enemy of our own making, and we have a decision to make. If we stand now, then we can have that next Martin Luther King moment. If we stand now, then we can have our next moon landing. We can say to the next generation, I was there when all of us stood and said no more pollution. I was there when we stood against climate change. I was there when we forced them to stop cutting down the forests or poisoning the oceans, and they can gaze in awe at the next Martin Luther King or watch the next broadcast from another world. We owe it to those who follow us not to poison our world anymore, but to try and make it better. This is a time for change. Or we can sit down and say nothing, and there won't be a next generation to retell our great moments to. There will only be silence. Of course, this doesn't have to be the case if we all do our part. Martin Luther King once had a dream, and I have a dream too. But there shouldn't be just one man's dream. Every one of us needs to do our part. A few extra flowers in the garden or on that spare patch of concrete might seem like something small, but if every one of us plants those few extra flowers and can be bothered about our world, then actually we can make our world into something better. If we stop and pick up that litter, if we recycle that can, all of it adds up. At the end of the day, if we, the people, make a change, then hopefully our leaders will stand up and take notice. If we shout out with one voice, then we will be able to say to our children and grandchildren that we were there at a pivotal moment in history. We together will be the ones to share and be proud of our achievement.